hum of the engines drops away, leaving a silence so heavy it feels like a physical weight lifting from my shoulders. It is not an empty silence, but a waiting one. Through the oval window, the light is different here, not just bright, but silvered, as if filtered through centuries of sea mist and limestone dust. The wheels touch the tarmac with a gentle, rolling shudder that ripples up through the floorboards, signaling the end of motion and the beginning of stillness. The cabin pressure equalizes, causing a small, soft pop in my ears, and the world seems to settle into a slower, deeper rhythm. I wait for the aisle to clear. There is no rush. The buckle of the seatbelt releases with a dull, metallic click, a sound that marks the transition from traveler to arrival. I gather my coat. The fabric feels cool against my fingertips. Moving into the aisle, the carpet is thin and industrial, muffling the shuffle of feet ahead of me. I step forward, one pace at a time, letting the line of passengers flow like water through a narrow channel. The air in the gangway shifts. It moves from the stale, recycled climate of the cabin to something cooler, a draft that smells of wet stone and pine needles. The floor beneath my feet changes from the yielding carpet of the plane to a hard, ribbed metal ramp. My shoes make a hollow, rhythmic thud against it. Thud, thud, thud. It is a steady, marching beat that echoes slightly in the enclosed tunnel. Inside the terminal, the ground changes again. It is a smooth, polished surface now, likely linoleum or terrazzo. My footsteps become sharper, a crisp tap that dissolves quickly into the open space. I walk toward the baggage claim. The lights overhead are soft, not the harsh fluorescent glare I expected, but a warm, diffused glow that casts long, gentle shadows. I find a place to stand near the carousel. The belt begins to move. A low, mechanical hum vibrates through the soles of my shoes. It is a monotonous, comforting sound. Round and round the black slats go. I watch them. The repetition is hypnotic. When my bag arrives, I reach for the handle. It extends with a smooth slide of metal on metal. The grip is solid rubber, textured and firm. I tilt the case back. The weight settles onto the two rear wheels. I begin to walk toward the exit. The vibration of the suitcase wheels travels up the handle and into my palm. It is a constant, buzzing sensation, a tactile connection to the ground. On the smooth floor, the wheels hum a low, steady drone. I pass through a section of carpet near the sliding doors, and the drone ceases, replaced by a soft, dragging resistance. Then the floor becomes tile again, and the hum returns. The automatic doors slide open with a soft, pneumatic exhale. Visby greets me not with noise, but with the scent of the sea. The air is crisp, waking the skin on my face. I navigate the short distance to the transport, lifting the bag into the trunk. The journey to the old town is a blur of green fields and gray skies, a visual lullaby that settles me into a deeper state of rest. I let the modern world fall away in layers, peeling back time until the car stops near the medieval wall. The vehicle departs, and I am left standing at the edge of a lane too narrow for cars. The ground here is uneven. Round, smooth cobblestones that have known the weight of carts and boots for 800 years. I take the handle of my case again. The sound changes completely here. The wheels chatter over the stones. It is a chaotic, low rumble that echoes off the plaster walls of the cottages. It requires a slower pace. I do not hurry. I watch my feet find purchase on the stones. Some are gray, some are nearly white, polished by the rain. Roses climb the facades of the houses, clinging to the stone, their leaves dark and glossy. I turn a corner, and the rumble of my bag deepens as the lane dips downward. The lodging is a small house tucked behind a heavy wooden gate. The iron latch lifts with a heavy clunk, a sound of security and finality. Inside, it is quiet. The floorboards are wide pine, painted a soft gray. They creak welcomingly under my weight. I set the bag down. The weight leaves my hand, leaving a ghost of pressure that slowly fades. I unbutton my coat. The room is still. A window stands slightly ajar, letting in the cool, salt-tinged breeze that stirs the white sheer curtains. I move to the bed. It is the centerpiece of the room, high and covered in layers of pale linen. I sit on the edge. The mattress gives way, holding me, supporting the tiredness in my back. I pull back the coverlet. The sheets are white, crisp, and smell faintly of lavender and starch. I swing my legs up. My head finds the pillow. It is cool, a perfect counterpoint to the warmth of the room. The ceiling above is shadowed and still, a blank canvas for the mind to rest upon. I let my hands rest on the flat, smooth surface of the sheet. My eyes close, and the world narrows down to the slow, steady rise and fall of my own breath. The air here carries a specific weight. It is not heavy, but dense with the memory of salt and cold water. I stand before the great limestone curtain that encircles the town, the Ringmuren. It rises like a natural cliff face, silver and gray against the shifting Nordic sky. This is not a wall built of uniform bricks, but a mosaic of hewn rocks, stacked by hands that understood how to make stone endure the centuries. My fingers brush against the rough surface. It feels cool, retaining the chill of the night, even as the afternoon sun stretches across the grass. There is a texture here that speaks of the sea. I look closely at the mortar, binding these massive blocks. It is not smooth. Decades of coastal storms have scrubbed it, leaving the binding agents exposed. Here on the seaward side, the mortar is crusted with a fine layer of white salinity. It sparkles faintly where the light catches the crystals. I trace the line of the joinery, feeling the grit and the hardness. Above me, the towers loom, their silhouettes broken and uneven, like old teeth biting into the clouds. They do not watch the town, they watch the horizon. The path beneath my boots is a mixture of packed earth and fine gravel. I turn my back to the wall for a moment to face the water. The parkland of Almedalen spreads out in a sweep of green, rolling gently down toward the shoreline. The wind coming off the Baltic Sea is constant, a steady pressure against my chest, carrying the scent of dried seaweed and wet timber. I let the imposing height of the towers fall away in layers. As I move toward the coastal path, the rhythm of the walking trail becomes the rhythm of my breath. There is a profound simplicity in this stretch of the journey. The world reduces to 3 horizontal bands: the gray of the stone on my left, the green of the grass beneath me, the deep, churning blue of the sea on my right. I settle into a cadence of movement that requires no thought, one foot placed before the other. The ground is firm, offering a solid resistance that travels up through my heels. The sound of the water is a continuous, rolling percussion. It does not crash violently, but surges with a hypnotic regularity. A wave lifts, curls, and spreads itself over the shingle beach. Then it retreats, dragging the pebbles back with a sound like thousands of glass marbles rolling together. Then silence, then the next wave. I continue forward. The wind brushes through the tall, tufted grass growing at the edge of the path. The blades bow in unison, turning silver as they flip over, then green as they spring back. It is a visual echo of the waves. Step, breath, the crunch of gravel, the sway of the grass. There are no landmarks to check here, no signs to read. There is only the length of the path stretching out, curling slightly with the shape of the land. The sun warms the back of my neck, contrasting with the cool air rushing past my ears. I watch a single gull drifting overhead, its wings locked in place, riding the invisible currents without a single beat. It is suspended, just as I am suspended in this walk, moving without haste, held in the quiet space between the ancient wall and the open water. The path eventually curves inward, guiding me back toward the shadow of the limestone barrier. The monolithic gray expanse is broken ahead by a graceful archway. This is the Love Gate. It lacks the defensive arrogance of the other towers. It is merely a frame, an open mouth inviting the sea air into the city. I slow my pace as the terrain rises slightly to meet the threshold. The ground changes from gravel to cobblestone, smooth and rounded by countless footsteps. As I step into the archway, the acoustics shift instantly. The roar of the open sea is dampened, replaced by a hollow, rushing sound as the wind funnels through the tunnel. It is a distinct change in tone. Outside, the wind was broad and encompassing. Here inside the gate, it sings. A low, resonant hum vibrates off the curved ceiling. I lean against the inner wall of the arch. The stone here is sheltered from the direct spray, softened by patches of velvet moss that cling to the crevices. The green is vibrant, almost luminous against the pale rock. Through the opening, the town is framed like a painting. Narrow lanes wind away, disappearing behind corners of stucco and timber. But I do not enter yet. I linger in the transition space. The light is beginning to deepen, turning the silver wall to a shade of violet gray. The salt on the mortar glows comfortably in the twilight. I rest my hand on the cool curve of the arch, listening to the wind pass through the gate. A steady, endless breath that has flowed this way for 800 years. The air in Stora Torget holds a quiet, suspended quality this morning. It is a stillness that feels earned, resting heavy between the pastel facades and the gray stone that paves the square. I stand near the center, letting the space settle around me. The light is pale, filtering through a thin layer of high clouds that turns the sky into a sheet of diffused pearl. To my left, the imposing silhouette of St. Karin dominates the view. It is less a building and more a geography of stone, a cliff face shaped by human hands, and then reclaimed by time. I move toward the iron gate, which stands open, offering no resistance to the morning air or to me. Stepping onto the grass floor of the nave feels like entering a secret garden walled in by history. The roof is gone, surrendered centuries ago to fire and gravity, leaving the high Gothic arches to frame nothing but the drifting clouds. I tilt my head back. The limestone pillars stretch upward, pale and scarred, reaching for a ceiling that no longer exists. There is a profound silence here, different from the square outside. It is a silence held in place by the massive weight of the walls, insulated from the modern town by the thickness of medieval masonry. I drift toward the sacristy, a smaller chamber tucked away from the vast openness of the main aisle. Here, the light is dimmer, shadowed by the surviving vaults. My destination is a specific detail, small and easily missed amidst the grandeur. I locate the stone relief set into the wall. It is a carving of a wood anemone, a delicate flower immortalized in the rough grain of Gotland limestone. My hand lifts, fingers extending to brush the surface. The stone is cold, draining the warmth from my skin instantly. I trace the curve of the petals. They are worn smooth by time, their edges softened, yet the shape remains distinct. I follow the circular geometry of the center, feeling the grit of the stone and the slight unevenness of the carver's chisel marks from so long ago. It is a tactile connection to a specific day, a specific artist who looked at a spring flower and decided to keep it forever in rock. Leaving the sanctuary of the sacristy, I step back out into the open nave and then through the archway, returning to the cobbled streets. The walk to the next site is a slow, rhythmic journey. I do not rush. My boots find a steady cadence on the uneven stones. Heel, sole, toe. The sound is a dull, rhythmic thudding that echoes softly against the plaster walls of the narrow lane. The path slopes gently, guiding me without effort. I keep my eyes on the ground for a while, watching the pattern of the pavers. Some are gray, some hint at a reddish hue, all of them rounded and polished by centuries of footsteps. There is no need to look up. The walls on either side act as guides, their presence felt rather than seen. I breathe in the cool air, feeling it fill my lungs, and exhale it slowly. The rhythm of walking becomes a meditation. Step, breath, step, breath. The wind picks up slightly, brushing past my ears with a soft, rushing sound. But I keep moving forward. The world narrows down to this simple repetition. There is only the sensation of movement, the shift of weight from one leg to the other, and the solid resistance of the ground beneath me. I continue this way for a long time. The lane curves, and I follow the curve. The light shifts as a cloud passes overhead, dimming the stones for a moment before the brightness returns. I do not check a map. I do not look for signs. I simply let the momentum of the walk carry me. A solitary figure moving through the quiet corridor of the town. The sounds of the day are distant, muffled by the winding streets and the heavy atmosphere. It is just the walk, the breath, and the stone. Gradually, the lane opens up, and the rhythm of my steps slows as I approach the ruins of Helge, and this structure is different. It is not a long basilica, but an octagon, a two-story tower of worship that defies the standard shape of the other ruins. I approach the entrance, the grass cushioning my arrival. The walls here are thick, enclosing a space that feels focused, almost like a well. I ascend the remains of the staircase, moving to the upper level, where the walls still hold their octagonal form against the sky. The wind is stronger here. Because of the unique shape of the ruin, the breeze does not just pass through, it circulates. I find a place to lean against the rough masonry and close my eyes to listen. The sound is hollow and resonant. The wind enters the open arches and spirals downward, creating a funnel effect. It is a low, mournful hum, like breath blown across the top of a giant bottle. It rises and falls, a continuous song played by the weather upon the instrument of the ruin. I listen to the layers of the sound. There is the high whistle of air catching on a jagged edge of stone, and beneath it, the deep, rushing bass of the wind swirling in the center of the octagon. I stay there, pressed against the cold wall, letting the sound wash over me. It feels as though the building is breathing, inhaling the sea air and exhaling it as a heavy, resonant note. The light plays across my closed eyelids, flickering as the clouds continue their drift. I do not move to leave. I simply let the wind hold me in the stone circle, suspended in the gray morning light. The iron latch of the garden gate lifts with a singular, heavy clack, a sound that separates the open sea road from the sanctuary within. I step through, and the heavy timber door swings shut, sealing out the drone of the wind. Here in the botanical garden, the air possesses a different texture. It is thicker, woven with moisture and the respiration of 1,000 leaves. The path winds inward, bordered by plants that seem too lush for this northern island. Great broad leaves hang suspended in the stillness, capturing the afternoon light and holding it in their green veins. A walnut tree spreads its canopy wide, creating a tent of shadow that cools the skin. I move slowly, my purpose drifting from sight to scent. The sea is only a few hundred yards away, churning against the breakwater, sending its saline breath over the town walls. Usually, that sharp, briny tang is inescapable. It coats the lips and stiffens the hair. But deep in this garden, a silent battle is being waged. I drift past a bed of late-blooming roses, their petals heavy and velvet red. I lean in, testing the air. There is still a trace of salt here, a sharp edge cutting through the floral sweetness. I continue deeper, moving toward the center of the grove, where the canopy is densest. The gravel crunches softly under my boots, a muted sound compared to the hard strike of boots on street cobbles. Beneath the boughs of a mulberry tree, I pause. I breathe in. Here it is. The invisible line. The scent of damp earth, heavy peat, and sweet resin completely overtakes the memory of the ocean. The air smells ancient and green, like a forest floor after rain. It is a heavy, comforting blanket that wraps around the senses, filtering out the harshness of the coast. For a moment, the island feels vast, disconnected from the water that surrounds it. Through a gap in the exotic foliage, the ruin of St. Olaf appears. It is a solitary tower, largely reclaimed by nature. Ivy climbs the gray limestone in thick, ropey veins, turning the stone into a living pillar. It does not feel like a monument to history, but rather a natural formation, a cliff face rising from the garden floor. I rest my hand against the rough stone. It is cool, absorbing the warmth of my palm without returning it. Turning away from the green sanctuary, I find the exit that leads back into the stone maze of the town. The transition is gradual. The soft gravel gives way to the uneven, rounded backs of cobblestones. My stride adjusts to the rhythm of the street. This is a long, quiet quiet stretch of lane that demands nothing but forward motion. I let my eyes unfocus slightly, watching the gray stones pass beneath me. One step, then another. The rhythm becomes a metronome. The world narrows down to the simple mechanics of walking. The lift of a heel, the swing of a leg, the placement of a sole. The ground is not flat. It rises and falls in gentle, frozen waves of stone, forcing a slow and deliberate pace. To my left, a plaster wall runs alongside me, painted a soft, weathered yellow. To my right, a low limestone fence separates the street from a quiet courtyard. There is no sound here, but the brush of fabric against fabric as I move. No cars, no voices, just the steady, hypnotic cadence of boots on stone. The light is shifting, stretching the shadows of the eaves across the lane. I watch a shadow lengthen, creeping over the cobbles like a slow tide. It touches the toe of my boot, then stretches past me. I continue. The repetition is soothing. It clears the mind of the garden's density and prepares it for the stone giants ahead. There is no need to look up, no need to navigate. The lane is a chute, guiding me gently, but firmly toward the heart of the old town. 10 steps, 20, 50. The air remains still here, protected by the maze of houses. I am a solitary figure, moving through a painting of gray and ochre, a temporary rhythmic pulse in a street that has stood silent for centuries. The lane widens, and the hypnotic trance of the walk breaks as the skyline changes. Ahead, 2 massive shapes block the sky. Drotten and St. Lars, the twin ruins. They stand shoulder to shoulder, 2 colossal skeletons of limestone rising high above the low cottages. They are so close to one another that they seem to be leaning in, whispering secrets across the narrow gap between them. I approach the alley that separates them. It is a high, narrow canyon. The walls of the churches soar upward, jagged and imposing, blotting out the sun. As I step into the passage, the atmosphere shifts violently. The wind, which had been blocked by the town, finds this channel. Compressed between the 2 massive structures, the air accelerates. It is no longer a breeze. It is a physical pressure. I feel the wind tunnel effect immediately. The air pushes against my chest, swirls around my ears, and billows the back of my jacket. It is a solid, invisible river rushing through the gap. I stand in the center of the lane, suspended between the 2 giants. To my left, the Tower of Drotten is dark and formidable. To my right, St. Lars is lighter, its windows framing the blue sky. The wind rushes through the empty arches, creating a low, hollow hum that vibrates in the chest. It is the sound of the ruins breathing. The pressure of the air is grounding. It holds me in place. I look up, tracing the line where the 2 walls almost meet, separated only by a strip of fast-moving clouds. The stone is pitted and weathered, bearing the scars of 700 winters. I lean back against the wall of St. Lars, finding a niche where the wind cannot reach. The stone is rough against my shoulder. From this sheltered vantage point, I watch the invisible current rush past. The afternoon light is beginning to turn gold, catching the upper edges of the ruins and setting them aglow against the deepening blue of the sky. The urgency of the wind fades into a steady, background rushing sound, like a distant river. I let my breathing slow, matching the stillness of the stone rather than the speed of the air. The day does not end, but simply pauses, holding its breath in the shadow of the towers. The afternoon sunlight hangs low over the Baltic Sea, casting long, distorted shadows against the eastern ramparts. Rising like a white bone from the earth, Dalmanstornet anchors the wall, its limestone face pitted by centuries of salt and frost. I run a hand along the rough masonry. It feels cool, retaining the deep chill of the previous night, despite the warmth of the day. There is a specific texture to this stone, a coarse grain that speaks of ancient seabeds and compressed time. A narrow path winds away from the stone face, leading down into the dry moat. This was once a defensive ditch, a hard line drawn between the city and the invaders. But time has softened it into a gentle green valley. The ground is springy underfoot. Generous tufts of grass have overtaken the earth where sheep once grazed, keeping the vegetation tight and manicured. Now it grows wilder, swaying in the breeze that rolls off the water. I move slowly along the base of the wall. The wind is different here. Up on the ramparts, it pushes and pulls, but down in the moat, it flows like a river, channeled by the steep banks. I am looking for a specific place to rest. The tower casts a wide, triangular shadow that stretches across the moat floor, offering a pocket of cool shade. Here in the lee of the wall, the vegetation changes. The coarse weeds give way to something finer. I spot a patch of fescue grass, its blades thin and hair-like, rippling like the coat of a sleeping animal. I lower myself to the ground. The earth is dry and firm. I press a hand flat into the green mat. It gives way slowly, soft and dense, then springs back against my palm. It feels like spun silk, cool and inviting. I settle into the grass, leaning back until the world consists only of the sky above and the green stalks around me. For a long time, there is no movement but the wind. The air currents are invisible, yet they shape everything in this small valley. The tall stalks of grass around my legs sway in unison. Left, then right, then left again. It is a silent metronome, keeping time for the evening. High above, near the jagged battlements of the wall, the wind makes a different sound. It is a steady, hollow rush, like water flowing over a weir. Down here, the air is still. I breathe in the scent of dry earth and green stems. My breathing slows to match the rhythmic swaying of the grass. In, out, the world narrows down to this small circle of green. There are no other sounds, no footsteps on the path, no voices carrying from the town, just the wind high above and the rustle of the stalks near my ears. I watch a single blade of grass near my knee. It bends under the weight of the invisible current. It straightens. It bends again. The rhythm is endless. It is a lullaby without words. The sky overhead is a pale, washed-out blue, empty of clouds. The ground supports me completely. The stone tower blocks the sun, keeping me in cool shade, while the world beyond the shadow line glows with warmth. I simply exist here, resting, breathing, watching the grass dance. The repetition is heavy and comforting. It washes over the mind, smoothing out the edges of thought until there is only the sensation of being held by the earth. Slowly, the light begins to shift. The sun has dipped below the horizon line on the other side of the island. Yet, the day is not done. This is the moment I have been waiting for. The limestone walls do not simply go dark. Instead, they seem to remember the sun. The rock face above me begins to glow with an internal luminescence. It is not a reflection. It looks as if the light is seeping out from inside the stone, released from a deep reserve gathered over centuries. A soft, amber radiance pulses from the mortar and the blocks. The white tower stands bright against the deepening sky. It holds this stolen light, keeping the darkness at bay for a few precious minutes. I watch the colors turn. The amber softens to a dusty rose, and then to a pale violet. The blue hour arrives. The air grows heavier, pressing down with the cooling temperature. The sharpness of the landscape fades, replaced by soft blurs and indistinct shapes. I stand up, my movements slow and deliberate. My legs feel heavy, grounded by the long rest. I begin the slow walk back up the slope, moving out of the moat and toward the town gate. The grass brushes against my ankles, a final whisper of texture. The limestone walls have turned a deep, bruised blue, merging with the twilight. The path ahead is dim, but steady, guiding me toward the quiet comfort of the coming night.